This is the reason I ask is, we get used to all these creature comforts.
Yes.
And we don't need them, but we often come to depend on them in a way that makes us feel like we need them.
Yeah, but very quickly, there's something about the intensity of life that you see in people's eyes because they're living through war that makes you forget all those creature comforts. And it was actually, I'm somebody who hates traveling and so on. I love the creature habits. I love the comfort of the ritual, right? But all of that was forgotten very quickly.
Free divers learn to tolerate high levels of carbon dioxide in their bloodstream and stay very, very calm. The way they die is very interesting. Must be swimming feeling completely calm because they're very used to. They've trained up the carbon dioxide tolerance, and when they die, they don't suddenly feel like, oh my goodness, I'm running out of air, it's just lights, go black. That's it, they're just blackout. And so they're alive, and then they're gone. And so this is why they use spotters. They have a line. It's sort of like when you hear that skilled parachuters die. Why? Well, because they're so comfortable with so many jumps, they actually forget to pull. Sometimes there are many instances in which they're videoing. The first time jumpers right, and they're getting the video for them. And they themselves forget to pull, because they're so comfortable jumping out of planes.
Just the intensity of feeling, the intensity of love that people have for each other, that was obvious. In terms of food, so there's a curfew. So depends on what part of the country, but usually you basically have to scamper home at like 9 p.m. So the hard curfew in a lot of places is 11 p.m. at night, but by then you have to be home. So in some places it's 10. So at 9 p.m. you start going home, which for me was kind of wonderful also, because I get to spend, I get to be forced to spend time alone and think for many hours in wherever I'm staying, which is really nice. And there's a calmness and a quietness to the whole thing.
If you open yourself up that way, the things they tell, you can really hurt in every way, like just have me going to Ukraine, just seeing so much loss and death. Some of it is unforgettably haunting, not in some kind of political way, activist way, or who's right, who's wrong way, but just like so much pain. You see, it just stays with you. When you see a human being bad to another human, you can't get rid of that in your head. You can't imagine that we can treat each other like that. That's the hard part.
In terms of food, once a day, the food is incredibly cheap and incredibly delicious. People are still, one of the things they can still take pride in is making the best possible food they can. So meat, but they do admire American meat, so the meat is not as great as it could be in that country. But I ate borscht every day, all that kind of stuff. Mostly meat. So spend the entire day, wake up in the morning, coffee, spend the entire day talking to people, which for me is very difficult because of the intensity of the stories, one after the other. We just talk to regular people, talk to soldiers, talk to politicians, all kinds of soldiers. Talk to people there who are doing rescue missions, so Americans. I hung out with Tim Kennedy.
Oh yeah, great Tim Kennedy.
The great Tim Kennedy, yeah. Who also, him and many others revealed to me one of the many reasons I'm proud to be an American is how trained and skilled and effective American soldiers are.
When I saw parents when I did the child exploitation stuff, when they rented their children out, they literally rented infant children out to others for sexual gratification. I don't know how a human being could do that to another human being, and that sounds like the kind of thing you're going through.
I mean, there's many reasons I went, but it's definitely not something I take lightly or want to do again. Right. So I'm doing things that I don't want to do. I just feel like I have to.
Yeah, you're compelled.
So I don't think now I'll definitely talk about it, as we all should. There's different areas of the world that are seeing a lot of suffering. Yemen, there's so many atrocities going on in the world today, but this one is just personal to me. So I want to feel like I'm qualified just because of the language. So most of the talking, by the way, I was doing it was in Russian. So because of the language, because of my history, I felt like I had to do this particular thing. I think it's in many ways stupid and dangerous, and that was made clear to me, but I do many things of this nature because the heart pulls towards that. But also there's a freedom to not, I'm afraid of death, but I think there's a freedom to, it's almost like, okay, if I die, I want to take full advantage of not having a family currently. I feel like when you have a family, there's a responsibility for others. So you immediately become more conservative and careful. I feel like I want to take full advantage of this particular moment in my life when you can be a little bit more accepting of risk.
Responsibility is the state or certainty of having an obligation to manage something or of having power over somebody. At the point when you do what you have guaranteed, individuals consider you to be a capable and solid individual. This lifts an individual's confidence and self-esteem.
I grew up in California, and there were a lot of earthquakes. I remember the '89 quake. I remember the Embarcadero Freeway pancaking on top of people and cars. I remember I moved to Southern California. There's a Northridge quake. Wherever I move, there seem to be earthquakes. I never worry about earthquakes, ever. I just don't. In fact, I don't like the destruction they cause, but every once in a while, an earthquake will roll through, and it's kind of exciting. It sounds like a train coming through. It's like, wow, like the earth is moving, Again, I don't want anyone to get harmed, but I enjoy a good rumble coming through nonetheless. It's signal to noise. But if I saw a tornado, freak out. And people from the Midwest are probably comfortable with, Dan Gable, the great wrestler from the Midwest, and I've never met, but I have great respect for. He's probably, sees a tornado, is like, yeah, maybe, So I think signal to noise is real. Before I neglect, although I won't forget, speaking of signal to noise and environment, you are returning to or have gone back to one of your original natural habitats, which is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which
natural habitat.
It's actually difficult to pronounce in full. MIT, right? So you've been spending some time there teaching and doing other things. Tell us what you're up to with MIT recently.
Well, I'm really glad that you being on the West Coast know the difference between like Boston, New York. I feel like a lot of people think it's like the East Coast.
No, it's very different, especially to Bostonians and New Yorkers.
They get very aggressive.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I love it. I gave lectures there in front of an in-person crowd.
What were you talking about?
For the AI, so different aspects of AI, and robotics, machine learning. So for people who know the artificial intelligence field, they usually don't use the term AI, and for people from outside use AIs. The biggest breakthroughs in the machine learning field, with some discussion of robotics and so on. Yeah, it was in person. It was wonderful. I'm a sucker for that. I really avoided teaching or any kind of interaction during COVID because people put a lot of emphasis on, but also got comfortable with remote teaching. And I think nobody enjoyed it, except sort of there's a notion that it's much easier to do because you don't have to, you don't have to travel, you can do it out in your pajamas kind of thing.
Moral duty is having regard for yourself and for others as far as dealing with your activities and responses, feelings, and the outcomes that may emerge because of your activities, responses, or feelings. Moral duty is accepting that as people we need to comprehend and acknowledge the job our activities or responses sway others around us.
But when you actually get to do it, you don't get the same kind of joy that you do when you're teaching. As a student, you don't get the same kind of joy of learning. It's not as effective and all that kind of stuff. So to be in person together with people, to see their eyes, to get their excitement, to get the questions and all the interactions, it was awesome. And I'm still a sucker and a believer in the ideal of MIT, of the university. I think it's an incredible place. There's something in the air still, but it really hit, the pandemic hit universities hard because, and I can say this is not you saying it, this is me saying it, that administrations, as in all cases when people criticize institutions, the pandemic has given more power to the administration and taken away power from the faculty and the students. And that's a from everybody involved, including the administration, that's a concern, because the university is about the teachers and the students. That should be primary. And whenever you have a pandemic, there's an opportunity to increase the amount of rules. Like, one of the things that really bothered me, and I'll scream from the top of the MIT Dome about this, is they've instituted a new TIM ticket system, which is, if you're a visitor to the campus at MIT, you have to register. You have to, first of all, show that you're vaccinated, but more importantly, there's a process to visiting. You need to get permission to visit. One of the reasons I loved MIT, unlike some other institutions, MIT just leaves the door open to anyone. In classrooms, you can roll in the ridiculous characters. The students that are kind of like usually doing business stuff or economics can roll into a physics class and just, you're kind of not allowed, but it's a gray area, so you let that happen, and that creates a flourishing of the community. That was beautiful. And I think adding extra rules puts a squeeze on and limits some of the flourishing. And I hope some of that dissipates over time as we kind of let go of the risk aversion that was created by the pandemic. As we kind of enter the normal, return back, some of that flourishing can happen. But when you're actually in there with the students, it was magic. I love it.
Well, some of your earliest videos on your YouTube channel were of you in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
That's how this all started.
Yeah, that's how YouTube, like putting stuff on YouTube was terrifying, right? Like,
well, especially at the time when you did it. Again, you're a pioneer in that sense. You did that. Jordan Peterson did that. Putting up lectures I teach still every winter. I teach, direct a course, and I'll be doing even more teaching going forward. But the idea of those videos being on the web is that spikes my cortisol a little bit.
Yeah, it's terrifying because you get to, and everybody has a different experience. Like for me, being a junior research scientist, the kind of natural concern is like, who am I? And when I was giving this lecture, it's like, I don't deserve any of this.